Welcome back to We're Not Your Typical. Today on the show, we have the lovely Simon. Simon is an autistic adult himself. He is also a teacher at a mainstream school. Simon talks to us about all his struggles and how he copes in a mainstream school as a teacher. Like and subscribe. Bye.
Hello. Welcome, Simon.
It's nice to be here. Thanks very much for having me.
We're very happy to have you here. Now, this is going to be a really interesting topic because we're going to ask loads of questions, but Simon is autistic, diagnosed last year. He is a teacher working in a mainstream school 4 days a week with year one students at the moment. And you're also a neurodivergent consultant, which we would love to hear more about. So introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are, and then we'll fire away some questions.
So I've been teaching 20 plus years. I've been doing a mixture of roles in mainstream and special provision. I've been a subject leader, class teacher, member of senior leadership. And 4 years ago, I decided to go on supply teaching to give myself a bit of flexibility. But after my diagnosis last year, I wanted to use that to help parents, carers, teachers, and ultimately children who may be diagnosed with a neurotype or on their pathway. So I wanted to put my experiences to good use to benefit other people. Fantastic.
Why did you wait so long to get a diagnosis yourself? I'm sure you've always felt different because ultimately you're autistic, but what made you wait till now?
When I hit 40, I went through quite a period of reflection about where I was in my life, and I'd always put it down to anxiety around social situations, not feeling good about myself, overthinking things, feeling as though I approach things differently to other people. And it got to a point where I was working at a particular school on supply, and it got to after school. I thought, no, I'm going to phone the GP, and I'm going to try and make sense of it. And within 5 minutes, the doctor said, I'm putting you in for an autism referral, because they went through how you are socially, emotional thinking, how you feel about things, what you think about your day-to-day sort of functioning. And it was from then, rather than being socially anxious, actually, when they went through the things, I thought, actually, it's more than social anxiety. Mm-hmm. When they confirmed it last year, it was a real mixture of things that I felt. Relief that they're putting some, for want of a better word, a label on it.
Yeah.
But it also added a lot of confusion for me, because it was trying to make sense then of things that have happened in my life and why they've happened. Autism explains it quite a lot, but now I know that things like meltdowns I've had in the past, they're actually now because I'm autistic. And it took me a while to get my head around it. And even now, when I say that I'm autistic, it feels good that it's my identity, but also it still feels a bit all over the place, I'll be honest.
I suppose you're still learning as well, aren't you? Of how to navigate it. And so...
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that I can see now in my everyday life, things that happen, things like, the commute to work in the morning. I'm not a huge fan of public transport, the actual going on it, because I'm surrounded by lots of people. But I do love on a Saturday doing like random trips at the weekend, because I haven't got the structure during the week that I have on Monday to Thursday. And it's okay to do those things now. When I felt previously I would have felt a bit weird or a bit different or a bit out of place. And now it's more, when I've told people that I'm autistic, people, they don't
just look at you and think that you're mad.
No, they don't. They see it as, okay, this is what you are. This is how you function.
And you're embracing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not trying to hide it. You're not trying to mask it. If that's what you want to do on a weekend, getting on the train because that regulates you or that's what makes you happy, then why the fuck not?
Absolutely. But
you mentioned as well, when we were having a little coffee, that you're children at school, they're year one students, they're very accepting, aren't they? You bring in your neurodiversity to them as a general conversation, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
And I wish more people did that. You said, for example, downstairs, kids, I'm going to put my ear defenders on now. Everything's feeling a bit loud. And they'll say, okay. I think that's brilliant.
That's the question, sorry, that I wanted to come on to. What's it like as an autistic person working in like a mainstream system? Like, how do they cope with that, basically? Do you mask?
Yeah,
Do you have to mask and, sensory experiences? How does that work in a mainstream setting for yourself?
I mean, relating to your previous question, that things that I do in my normal everyday life within the workplace, it makes sense now. So things like, when it gets too loud wherever it is, whether it's in a classroom, corridor, I avoid the staff room. The staff room for me is sensory overload. So the idea that you have to go up there, you take your break upstairs, you sit down round the table and you're making small talk. Quite honestly, I don't want to do that. Yeah. At lunchtime, I see the kids off to lunch and exit the building and get my lunch. I go and sit in the park behind the school and I just decompress from what's happened in the morning, whether that's been what I've taught the children, but all that sort of hidden stuff that, colleagues come to you, they've asked you about something, or parents come to you in the morning with maybe a concern about their child, or they want to know something. Part of me goes into that professional mode where you answer those questions because that's your job. That's your job to answer those questions, to alleviate parents' queries. But then I didn't quite put it together that at what cost for myself that happens, because I was getting home and I was feeling absolutely shattered.
Yeah, I could imagine.
And I was thinking that, it just must be because I'm tired. Well, when people explain that concept of autistic burnout, that made a lot of sense to me, because when you are speaking to someone who's neurotypical and they're sort of making that small talk, they're doing those everyday things, and you realise that you do it differently, you process it differently, it all made a lot of sense, because that's the way I do things. And within the workplace, no one's batted an eyelid of when I walk around with my ear defenders on, when I put my sunglasses on because it happens to be too bright for me, or if I'm sitting in the classroom and I've got a fidget tool with me. No one, I don't want to say they don't care, but they do care. But
that's why they let you do it, because they do care.
They do care, and I think they see it when they see an adult who is autistic regulating themselves without calling it regulating yourselves. It's like, if I have a child who I can see is in that state of distress, and it could be something really little, like the best example I can think of is years ago, I can remember a child coming in very upset. And when I got to the bottom of why they were upset, it's because their mum forgot to feed the cat in the morning. And for that child, it was absolutely important that cat got fed in the morning, because they thought that if the cat doesn't eat the food, they're not going to be able to function during the day. So I made sure I phoned the parent up and then said the child's upset because you didn't feed the cat in the morning. And the parent thought it was a little thing, but for that child, it was a really big thing that happened in the morning. So it's almost like the stuff that I put in for children, all of that, I'm going to call it behaviour support rather than management, because I don't see behaviour as being something you have to manage. I neglected that for myself for so many years. And so now it's given me permission now to support myself.
Do you think just having that label, if you want to call it, has changed you completely? Because do you think it's allowed you to express yourself more as autistic than when you didn't have the diagnosis? Because obviously nothing's changed in the way of yourself, like from the day of diagnosis to the day before. Do you think just having that label has made you feel, you know what, I can embrace this and I can walk around with my ear defenders now just because the doctor has told me I'm autistic now? Do you think that has a massive part to play in it?
I do, because, if I go back like 2 years ago, I would never have thought of walking around with ear defenders on, or fidgeting with stuff, or getting up and moving around. when actually it's probably what I needed
Yeah.
at the time. And it almost appears like being given the diagnosis has removed the barriers for me embracing who I am.
It's kind of giving you a lifeline.
Absolutely.
I mean, for 40 years, I suppose you've masked a lot more than you had to or that you should have, or you haven't done or achieved all the things that you possibly could have because of that.
There's a big topic when it comes to labelling. And in your sense, actually labelling yourself
Help.
has really reassured you of who you are as a person and the people around you. And I'm pro-label too. Again, that might upset people.
You love a label.
I love a label because of the world that we live in the environment we live in. Not so much to praise that my child has a label, but guys, my child has got a label. So everyone around you needs to accept that label and let her be or let him be who they're meant to be. And I feel that that's really benefiting you receiving a label.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it gives you permission to let the mask off. But also at the same time, it almost sometimes puts the pressure on yourself because you're having to, when I get home, the thing that's probably exhausted me the most isn't the teaching bit because I'm in my comfort zone when I'm teaching. It's all those other bits that go around it. So it could be as simple as, I've got the later train to get home, which has annoyed me because how dare that train be late? How dare it upset my routine of the day? But then sometimes I take a step back thinking, well, they've announced the train's going to be late because there's been an incident at the station. Well, I can't help that there's been an incident at the station, but it still annoys me that I can't get home by a certain time. Because when I get home, and actually in the morning as well, it's almost the autistic part of me comes out most first thing in the morning and when I get home, because as soon as I walk through the door, there's no one else there. It's just me at home. And what I do is, in the morning, I get out of bed at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock is the alarm call. I have to do all these bits in the flat before I leave. Things like, I have to check all the plugs are off. I have to check that everything's in its place. Sometimes I've been late leaving because I've got out the door, then realised there's one plug I haven't switched off. And I worry that if I leave that plug on, something's going to happen. Something's not going to happen. But it has to put my mind at ease that, I've switched the kettle plug off, I've switched the TV plug off, the windows shut and so on. It's just all of those bits now. It's part of being neurodivergent that you have to have those.
Bloody exhausting.
Yeah,
I was going to say it's very tiring.
That's before you've left the house.
Yeah, before I left the flat. And then
you're dealing with 1-year-olds, 30 of them.
Yeah, dealing with the when the children come in, it's almost it flips into
teacher mode.
Yeah, children come in and those children who have come in maybe not feeling quite themselves in the morning. So then you have to try and decode, support.
I suppose it kind of takes that away from you thinking and worrying about yourself. If you worry about someone else, I suppose it takes you out of yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree.
That probably helps.
Yeah, it almost, because the children, when you're a teacher, the children are the priority.
Yeah, they need you.
Full stop. And it's almost been a running thing now that, the amount of work that goes into supporting children, regardless of not whether they're neurodivergent or neurotypical, it then gets to you. And then you sort of realise at the end of the day how much you've done during the day, all those sort of little micro conversations, all those micro bits of support that you've given, whether it's maybe a child during a writing lesson hasn't understood it. So you've adapted on the spot with how to ensure they access the learning. So whether you need, whether the instructions weren't clear, whether you haven't chunked them appropriately, whether you haven't color coded or whatever. It's very gut instinct that, but that's touch wood. I mean, that's for me is possibly where sort of teaching and neurodivergency overlap because the systems that I have in place to manage my own things I use in the classroom. So things like, my flat has Post-it notes everywhere. So things like it will say, use this food by this date, because if I don't, then the food will go off in
I need that.
the fridge, and I'll forget it.
The amount of food I waste
Yeah.
because of the
It's terrible.
expiry dates.
The post-it notes, colours is everything. Checklists, triple appointments on my phone. So, if I have an appointment with the doctor, I have a reminder on my phone. I have a reminder on the post-it note. I have a reminder on the calendar.
Is this because you're forgetful, or is this because you need to have that in place?
I have to have those in place. I think that's an ADHD thing.
Trait.
Being your sort of short-term working memory isn't as fluid as it could be. But yeah, I can remember things that happened like 10, 20, 30 years ago. But when I do these in class, when I'm sort of modelling how to do an activity, it's, first we do this, then we do this, visualising it all, putting all the keywords up for the children. It helps me as much as the children to think, these things are in place. They're not there by accident. They're there because I know that they work. And something as simple as something like a visual timetable, where I think a lot of people think that's a given. It isn't actually a given in a lot of classes that I've been to on supply teaching. But when the visual timetable's there and it's used as it should be, it's the thing that children look at the most when they walk in the classroom. This is what's happening during the day. Those children that need it on their table, they have it on their table, and it alleviates anxiety. And it builds, for me, connection, which is the most important thing. If children can't connect to you, then I think we've got a problem, if they can't fully connect with the adults that they're working with. And I think for me, that timetable and what's happening during the day is key. It might feel like the same record playing over again each day, but it has to be like that. Partly because I get it.
Yeah.
And partly, I think, because children develop at a massive rate. The children that I teach and have taught in the past, those sort of 4, 5, 6-year-olds, their brains develop at a frightening rate, but predictability goes a long way.
Yeah.
Can I ask, and this might be a really tough question, but just out of interest, I think for neurotypical brains, if you at home, especially being an autistic adult, didn't have your post-it notes everywhere and how organised you are and your 3 alarms, how would it genuinely make you feel, as an example, if you forgot about a doctor's appointment that you had? How would it really make you feel?
And it was your fault.
Yeah. I'd feel embarrassed more than anything, because if the doctor's you've gone to the doctor with something, the doctor's come back to you with an appointment, then usually straight after that, they've confirmed the appointment, then it goes everywhere. There has been times where I've had those triple alarms and I've generally not done it. I've not gone to it. Or I've realised too late. So I've got an appointment at 10:30. I've realised at 10 o'clock I've got to be somewhere. I'll overthink it because I'll think that person will think that I'm a bad person for forgetting to turn up to something that they've arranged. So then all the overthinking, anxious thoughts go through it.
Will it ruin your day?
Yeah, it will. Because I'll be thinking, even the day after, I'll be thinking about, I'm so stupid for forgetting that appointment when I've done everything that I think to put it in place to hopefully ensure that I don't forget it. And
do you think it would ruin their day? If you called up the doctor and said, I'm so sorry, I've completely missed my appointment, I cannot get there, do you think their day's ruined?
Part of me thinks they wouldn't care, to be honest.
Yeah?
They would just get on with the next appointment.
Yeah?
They would
but for you, it's damaging for you.
Yeah, it is damaging, because that fear of that sort of is almost like when someone criticises you. Because I have, when people say to me something that maybe I've done wrong, or a deadline I haven't met, or something along those lines, and I haven't been able to justify it, that feeling of feeling bad for yourself, the rejection sensitive dysphoria, the RSD, comes in, and you feel people don't get how bad that is. You're absolutely beside yourself that you haven't done it, or you haven't almost met the expectation of the other person, and you're having to sort of scrabble around to try and work out what to do about it. So I've always found that when I get really anxious about things, I've now learned that my way of dealing with that is go out for a walk in the park, on the common, nature, anything nature-based. I don't know what it does, because I know there's scientific evidence that goes through walking in nature is beneficial for your mental health. But when I go to the common at the top of my road at Streatham Common, I walk there and the anxiety just seeps away immediately. But then it used to be quite a lot for me to contend with at the time.
But you have found some coping strategies to make you feel okay if you have been in that scenario, which is amazing.
I think you're pretty hard on yourself, to be honest. I think you give yourself quite a hard time.
You're not the first person that said that. You know, my dad says it to me.
I think you need to be kind to yourself a little bit more.
My dad says it to me. My brother says it to me. Lots of people say that it's almost that feeling that you're not good enough.
Well, you're the only one, I suppose, putting the expectation on yourself. No one else has the expectation of you.
But if you're hearing people around you say that,
doesn't matter.
Can you register that? Can you work on that? Or
it feels strange, you know, when someone says positive stuff. It registers. Oh, that person thinks I'm doing a really good job, or I've done this really well. That registers. I think, yeah, great. Move on to the next bit. Don't let it dwell. So one of those things, you know, it almost feels like I'm not as excited about it as maybe a neurotypical person would be.
But interestingly, you dwell more on your negatives if people are negative than you do on people that are positive, which is such a shame, because we all thrive from hearing things that are positive. And that's what keeps us going. Whereas your brain makes you dwell more when it comes to the negative side of things, which is really, really tough for you.
Yeah, it really amplifies things. So, you know, things like how I organise myself, like, you know, the common conception is, you know, people will make a list of what to do and how to do it. Lists don't work for me because you never get to the bottom of it. You put too many things on it. So I always prefer to have like plain notebook. I divide it into 4 bits.
Yeah.
And I put what I have to do in each bit, and I don't overload it on purpose. And I highlight everything in red that I must do that day. I cannot leave the building without doing those things. But that gives me the confidence to say to someone, if someone comes to me with an additional task, I can say, well, actually, I haven't got the capacity to do that at the moment because I'm doing this, this and this. Or I can't fit that on my priority list at the moment. Saying stuff like that used to feel quite horrible at first, because then that other person's going to come back to you and say, well, why are you putting this on? Why are you not putting what I say on your list? Because that's important. But I've determined that other things are important. You know, things like it's important that I get this work marked before I leave the building, because I don't want 2 lots of marking the next day. Or I took photos of the children doing this particular task and I want them up on the wall before tomorrow. So that's what I'm going to do, because it's for the children. The children want to see that they want to see it, and they make reference to what's on there. They know straight away when something's up and something's in the room. So I think where I sort of gained those strategies, which I thought I always did, actually I do it because I'm coping.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise that for years. I didn't realise that at all.
But they also make you feel good, right? So even though you put the stress on yourself and you want those photos on the wall, you know that your kids are going to have such big smiles on their face. That's a big win for you.
Absolutely.
And that's great.
Yeah. And it's almost the sort of that running theme about, you know, you do lots and lots for the children because that's the focus, and at what cost to yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I realised. That's how it's always been throughout my teaching career. But the autism diagnosis has almost gradually made me realise that the things I do for myself, they need to be as equal. But it's a hard thing to get my head around, because I've been in that mindset for so many years, and trying to shift that over, it's difficult.
So that kind of like, why do you feel, if I'm correct, that schools urgently need to move away from traditional learning, like models?
So traditional learning, for me, if I think about, I'm going to call it inclusive teaching, how you would inclusively teach, that will not just benefit neurodivergent children, it will benefit all children. the key for me, the pinnacle of what we need to put into classrooms is moving. Expecting children to sit on the carpet for like 20 minutes. I couldn't sit on the carpet for probably more than 5 minutes. When I started reading more around child development, because my teacher training contained hardly any child development, when I sort of read around children thrive on movement, the brain's programmed for movement, I thought, right, that's something I can get hold of. So then I started gradually introducing more movement within when I was teaching, because 5-year-olds, they can't concentrate for, I think the formula was something like double their age plus two minutes. And I think that even something like color coding keywords on the board and saying like, when we get to that word, we're going to just simply stand up. That little shot of like dopamine when we get up off the carpet and we start then moving around, we start talking to each other. That, for me, has been a big game changer for me, is that movement equals engagement, it equals regulation, it equals learning, because you're more likely to realise that if you have an action with a word or an action with a movement involved, the cognitive load for children is less. So something like this week, we were learning to use connectives and, so, because, but, and whatever. So like, and, we link arms for and. For but, we stand back to back, because we're twisting our arms around. And, I thought, I wasn't quite sure how that was going to register, but I could see straight away up and moving around, find someone to do that action with. For those children who found like finding a partner difficult, it was like, if you don't want to go with a partner, you've got the freedom to do it by yourself. Because I think far too often we push ourselves, work with a partner, work in a group. When actually, quite honestly, I work better on my own.
And do you know what? That's just reminded me. When you'll randomly go to like a gym class or something and you've got to partner up with someone random.
Were you ever the last one left?
I don't want to partner up with someone random. I would rather do it on my own or someone that I'm familiar and feel comfortable with. And sometimes in school environments, you get put on the spot to do things that actually you don't want to do as well. And
Gives you anxiety.
yeah, it does. And I think it's unfair for the children that aren't able to communicate. But it's interesting because what you're saying really is you're in a mainstream school.
You want to bring in...
like lots of your children are neurotypical, but actually all of these interventions that you're putting in place and different ideas work for everyone.
Yeah, I think when I started my supply teaching journey, I almost saw that as a chance to reset, because I'd been like teaching non-stop, and then I decided in 2021 I wanted to break from full-time teaching. And when I started to do supply, I thought, right, I looked at bits like training bits, funded training myself, because like supply teachers don't get automatic CPD. And it sort of struck me that, right, I'm going to go in with stuff. I'm going to put some money aside to buy stuff so that when I go in, I've got this stuff there. I'm going to be scrabbling around for stuff. And, there's people that I took inspiration from in terms of like getting stuff to move around with. Fidgets, I went in with like a bag of fidgets, a bag of this, bag of that.
And you would give them to your students?
Yeah. It was almost quite risky doing that, because you never know quite what you're going to face if you go into an unknown school, which is very odd, because, as an autistic teacher, that it didn't bother me that I was going into like different schools every day, because I knew that when I got into the classroom, I could see what was being left. I could think, yep, I've got that there, but I'm going to change that. I'm going to do that. And actually you could see when the children walked in, you could see children that needed additional stuff. So whether it was like, you could see children doodling, for example. Doodling for me is regulation. You're sitting there, you're doodling away. I do it in staff meetings. I sit there and do it. I'm still listening to whatever's being said, but I'm still I'm doing what I need to do. And I found quite quickly that it separated into two camps. There were some people, particularly teaching assistants, because the teaching assistant is the person that goes and reports back how the supply has been during the day. And more often than not, they would say, everything was great. Sometimes you get teaching assistants who would say, it's just a bit different. and they didn't fully appreciate or understand what it was that I was doing.
I think that's what it is. It's the understanding. I don't think that they understand
Yeah.
change or like change or something different.
I think it's, you've been taught one way, a textbook way, and when you want to bring in your own different ideas, some children, some teachers and people may not fully grasp or understand your concept. I want to talk quickly and more about your neurodivergent consulting, your ND consulting. I know this is quite a new venture for you, but I think a lot of parents and people listening would be really interested to hear more about it.
Yep. So I made a decision last year in September, just before September, the summer holidays, to utilise my experience, and I wanted to help as many people as possible. And I kept toing and froing between sort of teachers, schools and parents, carers. So everything told me to go for one of those groups. But very quickly I found people that were getting in touch with me via Instagram were a mixture of both parents and carers plus people who worked in schools. Now it seems to have shifted more towards parents and carers rather than schools. And I thought, right, we're going to try something. We're going to try going it alone here in terms of consulting. And I found quite quickly that there's an appetite for, I'm going to call it the lived bridge. The lived bridge for me is you've got teachers, parents. I'm in the middle of those because I am a teacher. I'm not a parent, but I have a lot of experience working
You've
with
got loads of experience working with children.
And I found that between September and now, I've been doing some training sessions with local authorities, one up in Sheffield. And that was quite daunting because instead of children, it's adults.
Yeah.
So there's 30 adults in a room. There was someone from the council there, and then someone from the early years team there. And I was confident about what I was delivering. That was my comfort zone. It's all the other bits when you present, it's worrying about, do they get it? That bit where you tell people to talk in groups.
Sorry, can I stop you for a minute? I don't really understand what you're helping with. Sorry. What is it? So you speak to parents about what, or you speak to teachers about what?
So parents and carers will typically ask things like, child is exhibiting this sort of behaviour at home.
Right.
Are there any strategies you can suggest?
Fine. Okay.
Or advocating for their children within schools. Teachers, schools, local authorities are asking for typically training on how to create more neuroaffirming environments, so more inclusive environments. So they're having children in the class who are either diagnosed or they're on their SEND pathway, and it's got to a point where the school, funding within schools isn't brilliant.
Telling me.
And on top of that, they have the children in their classes. It's what to do, how to support those children.
So would you go in, or would you just speak to the TA or the teacher or the parent, or would you go into the school to help that teacher?
Ultimately, that's where
you want to be.
That's where I've pitched it. But unexpectedly, it's been the local authorities that have bought in for me to train a group of teachers.
Fine.
And then they've gone back to their schools with the advice that I've given them.
That sounds amazing.
Which has impacted the children. And when I first did it, I wasn't sure where it was going. I thought, it all sounds good, but I couldn't quite read the room.
And you're doing this in mainstream schools?
Yes, mainstream, yeah.
Okay.
I think it's fantastic that you're sharing this advice to teachers, parents, from someone who is autistic themselves or has additional needs.
I don't think you can get a better advocate.
No.
Yeah, I think when I say I'm a teacher, that was great. When I say I'm an autistic teacher, that's almost a double winner because then people take notice of the fact that when you're dropping in your lived experience, one of the first slides I had was like, it's a visual of my special interest that I've had in the past. So it's had on there things like I went through a cycle of going to the supermarket and buying, when Radox was on offer, loads of shower gels, and I had like 37 of them lined up in the bathroom. And every time I had to have a shower, it'd be like party time, pick one. And that's just how it worked. And I loved it. Or I'd have things like, I'm a huge Formula One fan, and I love watching like the timings when they go around the track. I love things like the reality TV shows, particularly like Strictly Come Dancing, and they do the scorings with the paddles.
Yeah.
I love that particular bit. And when I'm feeling dysregulated, that's another thing that I do. I watch complete reruns of shows that I've loved in the past because I know what's going to happen.
That's so strange because it's quite common.
That's very common.
And my husband's the same. When we start a new series, he will Google on series 1 to know exactly what happens throughout and knows the ending. And I find that so annoying and bizarre because I need to know I want to, wait for that.
So the last question I actually want to leave on, Simon, is what's the single most important message every parent listening can take away from this conversation, and where would they find your specialist training and resources?
I think for parents and carers, it's that advocating for your child, regardless of whether they're diagnosed or not, you know them the best out of anyone.
Yeah.
And, if a parent was coming to me and talking about what they're seeing at home, I would soak all of that up.
Yeah.
And I think it's how advocating for your child, for me, as a teacher, facilitates the partnership, because the partnership is very important. And I think it's accepting almost, as well as the child, it's the parent, what the parent says, because as well as connecting with children, connecting with parents and carers is absolutely key.
Yeah, I think that's a great message to leave it on. So thank you so much for coming in. I think you've been unbelievable. I mean, I've learned so much, and just keep doing what you're doing because it's obviously working for you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.